fuzzy.
Phantasio is a fan favorite when it comes to Duet Night Abyss's story. Though, when it comes to his character in-game, I'm sure a lot of people have likely delayed obtaining him due to the fact that he either requires level 60, or because you didn't want to spend your weekly claims to get him just yet because you had other things to chase after. However, Phantasio is an extremely good character, and I went ahead and got him, leveled him up, built him, and figured out his best weapons, demon wedges, and supports that you're going to want to bring in order to bring out the max potential that he can offer. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So starting out, we have Phantasio's skills. His first skill is going to be Recitativo.
Mio de Noche.
Whoa! Okay.
It will actually change depending on what mode you're in. Now, while you're in his human form, you will just simply do a short-range attack, which will spawn essentially like 3 different grabby hands that will just damage enemies nearby and inflict them with 5 stacks of Adagio. And Adagio is going to be a debuff applied to enemies, which will enhance the damage of his other skills. However, if you're in his Bestial Fury form, it will instead be replaced with Aria, which will dash forward, dealing Umbro damage to nearby enemies, as well as granting him the Presto buff, which will increase his skill range and grant an immunity to hit stun for its duration. And it will last for 5 seconds and give you a 30% range boost. Now, when it comes to his transformation skill, Curtain Up, it will swap him into the Bestial Fury state, which will restrict both of his weapons and replacing one with a melee swipe attack and the other with a laser beam. And we can see it like so. You'll be doing repeated melee strikes, or when you're in air, you can do the laser beam attack. Both of these attacks will apply Adagio stacks on the enemy with a rate of 66.7%. What the Adagio stacks actually do is give you a massive damage increase to both the 4th hit of the slash attack as well as the plunge attack that he's able to do while in the Bestial Fury state. And it will be a massive damage boost per every stack. So you're going to want to stack as many of these as you possibly can before detonating them with those finisher attacks. And there is a particular damage rotation which I like the best, which makes use of these plunge attacks and their slightly higher damage compared to the 4th hit. Additionally, detonating those stacks and proccing Fumata will give you immersion based off of your max sanity. Also, attacking with the 3 hits of the Furious Claws as well as the Laser Beam will also trigger Duo, which will grant immersion based off of your max sanity as well. And immersion ties directly into his passive. So the first part of it is on stage, where basically while you're in the Bestial Fury state, it will increase Phantasio's attack based off of his max sanity. And you'll also be given immersion by casting skills, both his Recitativo and Aria. And you will also be given an amount of immersion per second while in the Bestial Fury state. But once you get enough immersion, you will enter Bestial Fury Devotion, which will be an enhanced state, which will give you additional attack boost based off of your max sanity, and will also give you a skill speed boost, allowing you to attack even faster. While you are in the Devotion state, you will drain immersion instead of sanity, allowing you to regenerate a lot of your sanity as well. And this, combined with the skill efficiency boost, as well as one main wedge, which I will highly recommend you run on him, will make it so that Phantasio will largely not have very many sanity issues at all. You would have to be in an extremely extended fight without very many opportunities to attack in order to actually start running out of sanity, especially when you get into more of his Introns. Now, each Intron is going to be a pretty decent boost to him, obviously with Intron 1 and 2 being the major breakpoints. So Intron 1 will increase the immersion gain from Duo to 1.5% of max sanity, basically doubling it, which will certainly help increase his uptime on the enhanced state for his Bestial Fury. Next up, we have Intron 2, where when using the 3 hits of the Furious Claws, or the Laser Beam, it will decrease the damage taken by Phantasio and increase the chance of inflicting Adagio to 100%, and this will be a major QOL for him, allowing him to detonate the max stacks of that even more often, and that directly ties into his I4, where when you detonate the max stacks of Adagio, it will additionally increase the damage of that attack by another 110% if they are at max stacks, which will certainly cause those detonations to deal immensely more damage. And of course, we get to his Intron 6, where it states that Presto will grant an additional 90% morale while it is active, and when Duo procs, it will also extend that duration by 0.2 seconds, which means you won't have to constantly reapply Presto when using Aria, which can help a little bit, but when it comes to the typical rotation on Phantasio, it's not really going to change it very much, but can allow some different gameplay, like instead of using the skill, you may be able to jump in order to use the plunge attack. But his Introns largely aren't going to change his gameplay style very much compared to an I0. Now moving on to the Demon Wedges, this right here is going to be my recommended setup when it comes to his I0 Illusionary Sacrifice. While you aren't able to make use of its second effect, will give you a skill damage increase, which will oftentimes be a lot more valuable than just running something else. This may depend on the kind of supports that you're running, because if you're running Tabitha, then Illusionary Sacrifice may not be as good as something like Duel, but if you're running Truffle instead, then Illusionary Sacrifice may be better. And of course, this is all going to shift based on how many smelts or introns you have on your other units. Now, when it comes to the Covenanters, you are largely just going to want to stack as much Blaze Morale as you can. Even at I6, Blaze Morale is largely going to be the better option, especially because how much attack you will oftentimes be getting from your supports. You will want to run Nihility Wildfire because, like I said before, you will not have nearly as many energy issues as you may think, and therefore the extra skill range will be a lot more of a benefit compared to the skill duration that you get from Midnight Sun. The Wings Inspo is going to be the best wedge overall for him, because not only is it going to give you a lot more skill efficiency, which will help him a lot, but will increase his max sanity by 100%. And because of what we saw before, in his passive, the max sanity of Phantasio will not only increase the uptime of his enhanced state, but will also directly increase his attack. This isn't a wedge that you're equipping to him just to help his sanity. It is also a wedge that is going to increase his total damage dealt. And finally, you are going to want to equip the Prime Morale wedge for your Typhon, and that will really tie it all together. And Sidestep is generally the best Feathered Serpent to run in the middle for active play. Though, when it comes to I6, you may consider removing a morale for a Scorch, but I will say because of your supports, that probably won't be something you'd want to do just because of how much attack boosts you're going to be getting from them. Now, moving on to his weapons, Wainwraith and X-Krez Duo are going to be the best options for him. It will give you a significant boost to your skill damage, especially if you drop Illusionary Sacrifice for a different wedge. There aren't really any other options that are going to be super worth it. If you really need the range, which I don't think you would need the range, you can run something like Destructo or the Soul Rend for that, but I would advise against it typically. The wedges on both of these won't really matter at all, so you can run whatever you really feel like because you're not typically going to be using these weapons. The movement setup for the Wainwraith is obviously going to be the preferred thing to help out with your character's mobility. Again, you can just run whatever you want on the X-Krez Duo. You're not going to really be using it at all. Moving on to the supports, you're really only going to have 3 main options for him. Now, obviously, Tabitha is going to be an extremely good option for Phantasio, especially because Tabitha is now free to grind in the Covert Commission shop. She has a lot of advantages for her, like providing a sizable skill damage boost, and with Introns, you will be able to boost this even higher, as well as the skill damage boost seen right here. Additionally, she will be crowd controlling enemies with her tentacles, which can help Phantasio with some crowd control and grouping them together for his melee slashes. And when it comes to her demon Wedges, Frosty Torrent is going to be a massive attack buff that she will be able to provide so long as you properly invest in her. Additionally, I would recommend running Surge because of the increased damage dealt, but this can be run on your other support as well, and a Prime Uplift or Serenity depending on what you're running on either of your supports. Beyond that, I'd recommend stacking your attack percent using Blaze Inspos, and maybe even a Wings Inspo if you are at a much lower investment on your Tabitha, such as myself, but you will want to make sure that you're getting as much attack stacked up on her as you can, so long as you're not overcapping on this right here. Beyond that, the other obvious choice is going to be Fina, who is the best support in the game for damage overall, and will obviously be providing a sizable amount of buffs, most notably the 24% penetration, as well as the 45% general damage boost, on top of the attack buff that she is providing with her weapon, being the Dreamweaver's Feather, and that is why I don't really recommend any Scorches at all on Phantasio, just because this is going to be giving you more than enough attack percent increase. And when it comes to the Demon Wedges, you can run either Prismatic Neon or Gleam Glimmer. Gleam Glimmer would probably provide a slightly better benefit because Phantasio can't crit. And of course, the other important one is going to be the Prime Serenity or Uplift, depending on who you're bringing, as well as including a Surge if it's not on your other support. The final support that you would want to consider bringing with Phantasio is going to be Truffle and Filbert. I will say that I'm generally going to recommend Tabitha and Fina over running Truffle and Filbert. There can be some notable uptime issues depending on your build with her. I have heard that Morph has actually figured out how to actually fix her AI to make her a much better support who actually keeps her buff uptime. So I definitely recommend checking him out if you would like to see that. But she's generally going to be providing not quite as many useful buffs that it will be as easily accessible compared to Tabitha. For instance, the Resolve is not going to be useful at all on Phantasio, and while the general damage increase is very high, you are getting some from Fina, and the other main thing being the attack boost, largely being locked behind her I2, and it's going to be much less accessible because she is a weakly character. When it comes to the weapons that you would want to run on your supports, Dreamweaver's Feather is going to be the best option for her. I would not recommend bringing anything else. That attack increase is just simply too good to pass up, but when it comes to another character like Tabitha, a lot of people will probably want to bring Shackle of Lone Wolf because it will be another attack increase and kind of her signature weapon. However, I kind of feel like this is going to be bait, especially because it's a rather low attack percent increase, especially compared to Dreamweaver's Feather, and you are going to be missing out on some other options. So if you want something to buff more, I recommend Arclight Apocalypse because you can get the skill damage increase from it. But my biggest recommendation is going to be bringing a boss staggering weapon like Entropic Singularity or Destructo, because since Phantasio's biggest portions of damage are going to be locked to melee attacks like his Plunge and his Claw Swipes, you are going to want to make sure that bosses stay on the ground as much as possible, so you're largely going to see much more benefit out of this compared to other options, especially because the attack and damage increases that you would receive from the other weapons are either going to be limited or not as high as other sources. And this will also tie into the Surge as well, giving you a lot more uptime on that, increasing your damage even further. When it comes to general gameplay for Phantasio, you are largely going to want to be in his ult as much as possible. You would mostly just attack enemies, taking a look at their debuff timer, and you're going to want to use your E to make sure that you have Prezzo so that you have resistance to interruption, and that ties directly into a Plunge, which will detonate most of the stacks. And this will work into a pretty easy rotation, especially if you have his I2. So it's definitely not a bad idea at all to make sure and use that as part of his rotation. Obviously, with your supports, you'll have a lot more energy generation, which will help you out with that Serenity. And like I said before, you are not going to have very many energy issues so long as you're not in an extended fight. And because of all the damage that Phantasio does, you're not going to find yourself in an extended fight, rarely ever. When it comes to the Geniemon that I recommend for Phantasio, obviously the Nebithis is going to be generally the best option for him as a buff to both his Umbro attack as well as giving a defense shred to nearby enemies. Obviously the battle pass is going to be the best one for damage overall. If you are having some energy issues with your Phantasio, you can always run the Ardent Pyru Tail to give yourself some more skill duration and also to give yourself some Sal Volatile drops. But of course it won't be buffing his damage nearly as much. If you do need the sanity and the uptime, that will help you significantly more than the extra damage and defense shred that you may receive from another one. Now, next up, we're going to have a boss showcase. Since Crystallophile is the featured boss in the Immersive Theatre right now, I will showcase a different one like the Enclosioneer, and we'll be able to see just how well he's able to perform right there. So we'll start out by summoning his supports, Tabitha and Fina, and we're going to get straight into the fight. Now, obviously, you're going to lead with his ult, like always, and I like to press E first. What you're going to want to do is pay attention to the debuff bar, because if you get max stacks of the debuff, you are just going to want to make sure and do your plunge attack regardless, and the boss is going to get broken pretty much already by my supports, and right here we can see that the boss is already broken. We are just going to get straight into taking out the rest of its health bar, attacking and making sure that I'm doing enough damage with these detonations, and we are able to completely one-cycle her at I0. So, as we can see, he is exceptionally strong for a unit, especially if you build him right. A 43-second clear at I0 is definitely nothing to scoff at, especially because I'm only using +5 wedges outside of the Wings inspo. Next up, we are going to go into the Immersive Theatre. So if you saw my previous video on the Immersive Theatre, you would likely already know just how good Phantasio is currently because of the Umbro and skill buffs that are in here. Since this is a Phantasio guide, it would be best to show him off in the theater here. So like always, we're just going to get straight into the ult right here, weaving in an E-cast every now and then to make sure that we've got the Presto, while also doing massive damage to all the enemies. And when it comes to his ad clear, you will find that you'll oftentimes take out their entire health bar with the normal slashes before you can even consider doing a detonation with your E. And the plunges are going to be extremely strong on him, but you are still going to want to make sure that you have your Presto active in order to get that skill range buff, because that will help you defeat more enemies with the AoE of it. And the plunge deals a pretty big amount of damage as well, and you can just focus up on an elite, stacking up the debuff on him before detonating it with either the fourth slash or the plunge. And as you can see, I am having largely zero issues with energy at all. I am cleaving through most of these enemies, and this is only at I0. At I1, you'll get even more immersion, helping his uptime even further. So getting straight into the boss, we've got the Crystallophile, and obviously one of the big advantages of Phantasio is that you'll be able to attack all of his limbs at the same time, making sure and detonating the stacks to give a big boost to his damage. And once all the legs go out, you'll be able to largely shred the Crystallophile, and this has to do with a particular quirk interacting with the Crystallophile and Phantasio's laser beam. So there appears to be multiple like hitboxes that the laser beam can make use of against the Crystallophile, which is why you've probably seen a lot of showcases with Phantasio going against the Crystallophile, because it allows them to deal significantly more damage against this specific enemy compared to the majority of the other roster and all the other bosses. So we can see right here that he is just going to immediately annihilate that health bar with just a laser beam. But as you saw with the Enclosioneer, that largely wasn't needed when it came to defeating a boss very quickly. What I can actually do here is I can wait for my support to take out the boss's stagger bar. As soon as he gets broken, we can just do the laser beam, which will end the fight very quickly. Now, obviously, Phantasio is a really good character who starts out really strong and only gets stronger the more you invest in him. He's got easy access to morale, which is a very nice damage multiplier, and has a lot of very good boosts in his kit. He's strong at I0 and only gets stronger with each Intron that you obtain. That really just about does it for this guide. If you are enjoying my coverage of Duet Night Abyss, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you never miss a video on this game. Also, I'd like to hear what you all think about Phantasio, if his performance is everything you ever dreamed of, or if it's even better than you imagined, be sure to let me know. Also, I do have a Discord servers, so if you'd like to join and connect with me and other people who are enjoying Duet Night Abyss, be sure to click the link in the description to become a member today. And with that all out of the way, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you all next time.